Today's lesson, lesson 4.4, is on multiplying and dividing inequalities. The learning goal is I can multiply and divide inequalities. For more practice on multiplying and dividing inequalities, you can refer to 11.6 on page 492 in the online textbook. This is also T4 on IXL. Let's start with some jokes. I can't find my pop-up book anywhere. Don't worry, it'll pop up. Very funny, Dad. Poof. And then they're both staring at the book. Here's a guy with his cat. It says, "You got hair on my clean laundry again, cat." Cat says, "You shouldn't be talking right now. Today's opposite day." And then now they're curled up against each other. Let's start with our daily review. We have -7 times 6 times -1. Feel free to pause the video and try these questions on your own. Do you remember the trick we use when we're multiplying and dividing negative numbers? Yep, there it is. So I'll begin by multiplying 7 times 6 and understanding that I have a negative times a positive. And I get -42. To that I have a negative times a negative, which equals a positive. And my answer is 42. Number 2, -9.37 plus 14.7. Now I don't want to use this here. Do you know why? Well, because it's an addition sign. Since we're adding, or I should say we have an addition sign, we have to use same signs add or different signs subtract. Since the signs are different, I have to subtract them. So I have 14.7 minus 9.37. Okay, I've gone and stacked my two numbers with the bigger number on top of the smaller one. I notice there's a blank space here, and we want to fill in blank spaces with zeros. Feel free to pause the video and try this on your own. Let's begin. 10 can't go into 7, so I have to make this into a 10. Then I borrow from the 7 to make this a 6. 10 minus 7 is 3. 6 minus 3 is 3. My decimals come straight down because I'm subtracting. Next, I can't do 4 into 9, so this becomes a 14, and I borrow from my 1, and this makes a 0. 14 minus 9 is 5, and 0 I don't need to bring down. Now I look at the sign of the bigger number, and it's positive, so my answer stays positive. So then my answer is 5.33. Number 3, we have 2x plus 5, parentheses, x plus 12. I noticed I have parentheses here. So I'll begin by using multiplication in the distributive property. So I'll do 5 times 2, or excuse me, 5 times x, and 5 times 12 to get 60. So now I have 5x plus 60. Then I'll add 2x. Notice how this says expression here. Let's continue. Next, I look for things to combine. 2x plus 5x. I have 7x's plus 60. As I mentioned earlier, it says expression. And there's no equal sign. So I can't move things over from one side to the other. Therefore, this is my answer. 7x plus 60. Number 4, -210 minus a -17. Since it says a minus, I probably want to use this, right? No, we don't want to use our triangle. Do you know why? Well, because it says it's a subtraction problem. I'll give you a minute to try this problem on your own. feel free to pause the video. Since it has a subtraction in it, I'll use keep, change, change. We're going to keep this the same, change it from subtraction to addition, and change it from a negative to a positive. Let's rewrite what I have. 210 plus 17. Now we have 210 plus 17. Notice how negative 9.37 plus 14.7 is similar to this question. And what do we do in this question here? We subtracted. So let's go ahead and subtract. So we have 210 minus 17. I'll turn the 0 into a 10, and I'll borrow from the 1. The 1 now becomes a 0. 10 minus 7 is 3. I can't do 0 minus 1, so I make this into a 10, and I borrow from the 2. Next, this becomes a 1, and 10 minus 1 is 9. Next, I bring down my 1 to get 193. Remember, we want to take the sign of the bigger number here, because there's more negatives than positives. So then our answer is negative 193. Number 5. A rectangle has a perimeter of 30 centimeters. It's a pretty good size rectangle. The length is 10 centimeters. And what is its width? Does this problem look familiar to you? Well, it's similar to the one we had in our study guide and we had in our last test. I'm going to begin by drawing a rectangle. We know that the perimeter is 30. Do you remember what perimeter means? Well, perimeter means the entire outside, the amount of distance around the shape. Okay, so the 10 goes here, and the length is here. Okay, because remember, a rectangle has two sides, just like the other two. Okay, so now we have to figure out what goes in these two spaces here. Can you think about what goes in both of those spaces? Well, if you couldn't think about what goes in both of those spaces, you could set up an equation like we did in our study guide. So I'll begin with my total of 30. I'm going to add 10 and 10 to get 20. And then I'm going to add my two x's. X plus x equals 2x. Now we have our equation. Remember, we chose x because those are our unknowns. Now I draw a line through my equal sign. I subtract 20 from both sides. And I get 10 on the right side. Next, I bring down my 2x. And I divide both sides by 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. X is 5. And we could put in 5 in for both of these x's here to see that 5 plus 5 is 10. 10 plus 10 is 20. And 20 plus 10 is 30. I'm going to take a break from all this math and read a book. It's called How to Be a Good Cat. The author's name is Gail Page. If you could tell me the name of the author and book, then I'll write you a pride ticket. Let's continue with our lesson. Our learning goal was I can multiply and divide inequalities. Let's review some vocabulary. This means less than. This means greater than. This means less than or equal to. And this means greater than or equal to. Can you think about what makes this a greater than sign and this a greater than or equal to sign? Well, it's the line underneath. So remember that when we're solving these inequalities today. let's go ahead and do some notebook practice. We have negative 3x is greater than 3. If you remember from our previous lesson, we turned all of our inequality signs into equal signs because solving an inequality is very similar to solving an equation. So I'll begin by writing negative 3x is equal to 3. Now I'll solve this just like an equation. Of course, you don't have to change it to an equal sign, but this may help those students that need to see the equation. So we'll begin by drawing a line through our equal sign. Since we're multiplying, we'll divide both sides by 3. If I divide by 3 on the left side, I have to divide by 3 on the right side. The 3's cancel out, and I'm left with x. 3 divided by negative 3 is negative 1. Now I'll rewrite my inequality so it looks like that. This next thing is a critical idea when it comes to multiplying and dividing inequalities. If you're multiplying the coefficient by a negative number, you must flip the inequality. The variable will stay on the left side, the inequality goes in the opposite direction, and then you write negative 1 here. So now our solution is x is less than negative 1. Just to prove to you that this works, and why we have to flip it, let's look at an example where we have 3 is greater than or equal to negative 2. I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 3. Three times negative 3 is negative 9. And then negative 2 times negative 3 is 6. Is negative 9 greater than or equal to 6? No. Negative 9 is not greater than or equal to 6. So, we have to switch our inequality sign. So just like in this example, where we flipped it, we can see that when you multiply by a negative, you have to flip the inequality sign. It's important to understand in this example that we multiply both sides by a negative, and not just one side. Because when we're dividing in our coefficient here, both sides are divided by a negative 3, which causes us to flip our inequality sign. You'll notice later in further examples that when we multiply by negative when it's not in the coefficient, that we will not need to flip our inequality sign. We'll do more examples like that later. Let's take a look at number 2. We have n over negative 3 is greater than negative 2.37. First thing we want to do is we want to turn our greater than sign into an equal sign. Now we could solve this like an equation. Since I'm dividing, I'll multiply both sides by 3. If I multiply by 3 on the left side, I have to do the same thing on the right side. So now my negative 3's cancel out on the left side. So now on the right side over here, I'm going to multiply 2.37 times 3. 7 times 3 is 21. I carry the 2. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2 is 11. Carry the 1. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. I move my decimal over 2 spaces and get 7, 11. Since we're multiplying two negatives here, I want to use my triangle. Negative times a negative is a positive. So then my answer is 7, 11. Now since we're not solving an equation, we have to go back and put our inequality into our question. Remember from our previous example where we had to flip the inequality sign. We want to flip the inequality if the negative is in the coefficient. So, therefore, I'm going to flip this. So now we have n is less than 7 0.11. Number 3. Negative 6 is less than a over negative 4. I'll begin by turning my inequality sign into an equal sign. After that, since I'm dividing, I'll go ahead and multiply both sides by negative 4. My negatives 4's cancel out on the right side, and I have negative 6 times negative 4. Since I'm multiplying by a negative, I use my triangle to get a positive answer. So now I have 24 is equal to a. Since I'm not solving an equation, I have to put back my inequality sign. Notice how there's a negative in my coefficient, and I multiply both sides by a negative. Therefore, I had to flip my inequality sign. Now, to be consistent with what we've been doing in class, we want to write our answer with the variable on the left side. So now I'm going to write this as a is less than 24. Remember that 24 is greater than a is the same thing as a is less than 24. Let's look at number 4. We have k over 4 is less than negative 4. I'll begin much like my last examples by turning my inequality into an equal sign. Now that I have an equation, I'll go ahead, since I'm dividing, multiply both sides by 4. My 4's cancel out. Negative 4 times 4 is negative 16. Next, I'll turn my inequality sign, or my equal sign, back into an inequality sign to get k is less than negative 16. 0 is greater than or equal to 7n. I'll start off by turning my inequality into an equal sign. Now I have 7 times n, and to undo this, I'll divide both sides by 7. 7's cancel out, and now I have 0 over 7 is equal to n. Anything divided by 0 is 0. So 0 is equal to n. Now we want to turn our equal sign back into an inequality. To be consistent with our other questions, we want to rewrite this so it's n is less than or equal to 0. So then our answer is n is less than or equal to 0. Number 6. b over 6 is greater than negative 30. I'll begin by multiplying both sides by 6 since I'm dividing. If I multiply by 6 on the left side, I have to do the same thing to the right side. Negative 30 times 6 is negative 180. Since I'm not multiplying or dividing in my coefficient, I don't have to flip my inequality sign. So then my answer is b is greater than negative 180. Notice how I still got the same answer, and I didn't change my equal sign, my inequality into an equal sign. Today we learned how to multiply and divide inequalities in one-step equations. For more information on multiplying one-step inequalities, you can go to 11.6 on page 492 in the textbook. You can also refer to T.4 on IXL. Thank you.